can be 29-0. It's ridiculous.
You gonna say that right when I start the podcast? Whatever. Whatever. We're
Oh
still
no,
going
no, no.
with it.
I didn't.
Whatever. No, it's
Sorry.
there now. We're starting. Welcome to another exciting podcast where Chicago Bears are losing 29-0. But we're not here to
Did you
talk
just you
about
just you just criticize me for
that.
saying that, but you go up and say, I hope Detroit gets blown out today too.
Detroit's not getting played.
I
Isn't
doubt they
playing
will.
today. They're playing on Monday. They're playing the Giants. They're playing New York
Who they
Giants. The New
playing?
York Giants on Monday.
Yeah. And Odell Beckham back, so
Is
maybe
he?
the same fate for
They said he
y'all.
was questionable.
Yeah, he back. Well, yeah, he questionable, right?
Yeah, they don't know, so we'll see. But anyway, on to the podcast. We're really recording, by the way. We really are.
All right, go ahead.
But yeah, so one of the things that we're talking about, just decided to record because we're having a really good conversation about this, is population demographics. Now, for the followers of this, our website and whatnot, you know that we talk about this a lot. In particular, the Midwest. But one of the things we were talking about, and Ray, you can explain a little bit more, is that Chicago,
All right.
the second largest ethnic group, is now Hispanics.
Yes. According to the census report of 2016, like Jamie said, the second largest ethnic group is Hispanic Americans. African Americans, Black people have become the third population due to the fact that Black people are leaving Chicago in huge and swarming numbers. We wrote an article about it. I actually wrote an article about it, and there's a report online if you want to check it out. But the African Americans are leaving Chicago. Some of the reasons why were taxes, violence, and just the feel of the overall city. They're just tired of it. So, like I said, hundreds of thousands of Black people left in 2016, and the Hispanic population in Chicago is just doubling. Like, they're coming from all over. All of the U.S. and moving to Chicago, and they're settling in areas. Personally, I hate to say it, but African Americans didn't want to settle in these areas that they're settling in now, and they're making the best of it. So, like Jamie said, they're the second largest population of minorities is Hispanics now. You want to touch on it more, Jamie?
Yeah. So I just have a couple. So one point, and then I have a question for you. But I do want to point out something when it comes to Chicago specifically, in all major cities, right? So all major cities have a lot of crime, right? I'm not saying anything crazy. New York has 8 million people. Their crime number-wise is the largest in the nation, right? That's not crazy. It's stats. I do want to make one thing clear about Chicago, though. Chicago has always, no offense to your city, because I'm from Detroit, but Chicago and Detroit have always had high crime rates before Black people even were large populations in it, right?
Yeah, look at the Chicago, the mob, Al Capone.
Exactly. Purple Gang in Detroit.
It's embedded in the city of Chicago. It sucks to say, but it's violence and corruption.
Right, exactly. That's why Chicago's called the Windy City, right? Because of the politics. It's always been like that. So I want to make that very clear, because I feel like there's just this perception of wherever Black people move to there's just high crime rates, and it's just a terrible place to live. Well, no, like these
good point.
Yeah, these major cities have always had issues when it came to crime. And
that's a good
generally,
point.
Yep. If it's the lower income areas, whatever that demographic may be, it's going to have a high crime rate. I used to hear about taking it south a little bit. Not don't mean it's not saying that this is bad or anything, but just talking about stats. So, for example, I used to hear about how like Miami, like in the 60s and 70s, was like a cesspool. Like it was really, really bad. But that was before the 80s came in. Like
for the drugs.
That was before like the Hispanics came in. Like, and then you heard about the drug game and whatnot. It was already not a very good place to live beforehand. So you're talking about cities that already had that, and then popular minorities moved into a city that was already had crime issues, and then it just essentially just continued. So I do want to say that, but it does make sense when you're talking about people wanting to move away from high taxes, poor weather,
Yeah.
and high crime rates. So that definitely makes sense. But one of the things we were talking about is
But
is the new.
you know what's funny though?
Well, let me just ask this question, and you
I'm
can
sorry,
go.
David.
Yeah, and then you can
Go
go
ahead.
all the way you want. What we were talking about is with Chicago, the second largest group being Hispanics. Is that the new plan for if you want to increase your population, right? Because Phoenix, for example, is increasing. You got Austin, Texas, which is increasing. You got all these southern cities which are and western cities which are increasing, but the East Coast and North aren't. So is bringing more Hispanics the key to growing your city? Okay, and you can go.
I I wouldn't necessarily.
Hello?
Sorry about that, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily say bringing in more Hispanics because that's not the case. The fact of it is that the birth rate. I mean, the birth rate and Hispanics are producing larger than anyone as far as having more children than whites and black people. So I would say you're bringing in anybody. The fact of it is that Hispanic Americans are producing at larger rates than us. So I wouldn't, and the fact of it is, we're not. It wouldn't change if you bring in Hispanics to your city or make it any different. The fact of it is that if they choose to come, they will come.
But that's what I'm
Due to the
saying.
fact of
That's what I'm saying. Is it
okay,
make you more appealing for Hispanics the key to growing your city?
the key
Because of
for say it again.
is making your city appealing to Hispanic Americans the key to growing your city because they have higher birth rates and whatnot.
No, because then you're just focusing on one group to appeal to. You have to focus on everybody. At the end of the day, you still have to focus on white people, black people, Asians, everybody. You just don't say, okay, let's make our city appealing to Hispanics. And my thing is, how can you say, or how can you make it, quote unquote, appealing to solely Hispanics alone without being stereotypical? Because if you say, okay, we're going to provide more opportunities in our cities for people to get jobs in the trades, get apprenticeships in the trades, or we're going to provide more grants for small business owners, entrepreneurs to start off, then that's an opportunity for everyone, regardless of your race. So if you're saying, okay, we're going to give opportunities to more Hispanics, then we're talking about, okay, how stereotypical. What's going to be the case? What are we going to do? And my question to you was, like, how could you attract more Hispanics to your population, to your city, without attracting every race?
How can you attract Hispanics without attracting any race? That's actually a really good question, right? Like, I don't even know what attracted Hispanics to Chicago, right? Like that. I don't know. I'm not Hispanic, but I do know. Like, it makes sense for like the southern regions, right? Because right by Mexico, and Mexicans are the highest Hispanic group in America. But what led to Chicago? I don't know.
Question.
Yep.
Why did our grandparents, why did they move from Mississippi to Chicago or Detroit?
Well, I mean, just because of the automotive, the industrial opportunities. There it is. There were
The
more
opportunities,
plentiful. Yep.
the job opportunities.
Yeah.
Same reason for Chicago, the job opportunities. You have family and friends who are already here who tell you about the opportunities in Chicago and how Chicago is a vast growing city. Mayor Emanuel is trying to attract Amazon to Chicago for their headquarters. So,
but I guess the
Chicago
question would be,
growing.
what kind of jobs, right? Because that was back in the.
Yeah,
you bring that up, but that was back in the day when you didn't need a college education to work in the industrial.
Well,
so what kind
now,
of
now you have a point there. But I would say the kind of jobs is, in particularly infrastructure, construction, there's a ton of infrastructure projects going on in the city of Chicago, across the city of Chicago, and Mayor Emanuel lets it be known that we're going to hire any and everybody. We don't care who you are. It's not like the old days where, unfortunately, it was just all white males. No, now it's okay. We're going to open this up for everybody can get an opportunity to do work for the city of Chicago and make a good living. Now, let me say this: you don't have to have a college degree for these jobs, but you do have to have a high school diploma,
right?
Which is understandable. I mean,
yeah, makes sense.
A lot, like I said, Hispanic are producing more than blacks and whites combined, right? So therefore, you have children, Hispanic American children, and who are just graduating high school. And okay, they see the infrastructure going on in the city of Chicago. You hear from a family member, hey, come up here. There's a ton of trade jobs or opportunities where you can work. Come here and stay. And they're going to bring their entire family here and get into those trade industries. Now, there's more than just the trades. I'm pretty sure that you have the retail. You have the growing Hispanic communities where they're having tons of new small businesses as far as restaurants. And especially in the food industry in Chicago. So it's a lot of stuff they can get their hands into. And this is really, I'm not trying to say this is for everyone. Everybody can get their hands into it.
Yeah, we asked the question.
We asked the question. It's a growing population.
Yeah, but we just targeted, well, not targeted. We're emphasizing Hispanics and like how they're growing in Chicago. So it makes sense what we're doing here.
And check this out, Jamie. An area that's changing now is the Woodlawn area community in Chicago. In a few years or so, the Obama Library will be in that area. Yeah. So the sale for prices, the home values are skyrocketing now. So you could come in and get a vacant lot, possibly if you live on that block, you get a vacant lot for $1 and you pay the property taxes. Why wouldn't that attract everybody to start moving in that area then? Okay, I live here. Now let me see if I can get a property or a lot for $1 and I'll build on this lot. I got to pay the property tax, understand, but I can build a house for, let's say, $100,000. Sell this house within 5 years for $200,000 because the area is coming up.
Sounds like a good investment.
You have in Pullman, the area in Pullman in Chicago. That area is up and coming. You have tons of areas that are up and coming, and in areas I don't personally know about. And I'm sure that goes because Chicago is a segregated city. I'll be honest.
Well, most cities are segregated.
Part of towns, it's going to be the same thing. More is coming to those areas, so that attracts people to those areas.
Okay. Well, those are some interesting thoughts, but let's segue a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time on this one because I'm trying to cut down on our podcast. I don't want to make these like 40 minutes anymore. But
okay.
Yeah. So the one, with that being said, the other piece that I wanted to talk to you about is the recent climate change. Well, you know what? The recent hurricane issues happening.
Yeah, ain't no climate change. I don't know what you're talking about. Climate change, that's not real.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you're talking about there.
So let's get into it real quick, and then we're also going to talk about some other stuff with that. So let me first talk about the hurricanes, and let me just get into this real quick. So as you know, Hurricane Harvey and Irma hit Southern America, which included Louisiana, Texas, and Florida, right? Specifically Southern Florida.
Even Atlanta.
Yep. Oh, exactly. That's a good point because I got family in Atlanta that I talked to that they said were hit. And unfortunately, some people died out there. So it basically all of Southern America. Now, we don't believe, we're not going to go as far as Jennifer Lawrence and say that. Did you hear about that? Jennifer Lawrence said that the hurricanes hit because America voted for Trump. We're not going to go that far, but
come on now.
Exactly. But what we will say is, so here's the thing about the hurricanes and climate change, and I want to make this very clear because a lot of people don't understand what climate change is. For starters, some people, for some reason, believe that since climate change is man-made, i.e., we're the reason why the the climate is increasing. So, when it comes to like Celsius or Fahrenheit, it continues to increase in terms of the hotness. Uh, since we're the reason that happened, since man did this, we can also reverse it, right? We can also make it colder.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it works, right? Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, so basically, what happens when you're talking about like the atmosphere? Essentially, um, humans have torn the atmosphere, which is allowing more sun to kind of come through. So there is no repairing that, right? Like you can't just go up to the atmosphere and repair it. Uh,
I mean, if we put, you think about it, Jamie, if you put a big, like,
Band aid.
box or, yeah, just put it around it, it may work. I
Nah,
mean, I'm sure Tesla,
that's funny.
Elon Musk probably gonna invent something.
Now there is something. So here's the thing, right? It's funny you should say that. So because of that, that's why there's so much sunlight getting in. That's why our planet is heating, is getting hotter. Now there are some natural coolants within our environment that can happen, such as volcanic explosions, right? Which I
Mm-hmm.
found was pretty interesting. So when volcanoes explode, it goes up into the atmosphere and it actually acts as a coolant because it essentially blocks out the sun a little bit. The kind of stuff that it's
Wow.
yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So there may be something with that, 100, 300 years to the future we may be able to deal with, but there's nothing we can do with
I
that
hope
right
not.
now. Yeah, there's nothing we can do with that right now, right? So the
Right.
point
Right.
being is what we're trying to do right now is slow the increase in the climate, right? And in order to do that, we have to switch over to alternative energies, right? What makes alternative energy such as solar, wind, and other things, so attractive is that three things here. They're cheap. It's actually cheaper to produce solar energy than it's been in the past. It's actually getting cheaper. If I'm not mistaken, it's cheaper now than fossil fuels, such as coal. Number two, the growth in jobs are well outpacing fossil fuels. Um, so because of that, we should be investing more in. We are investing more into it, and it should be more of a priority than it is now when it comes to the government, which I don't understand why. And then three is it's more environmentally friendly, right? When you're talking about fossil fuels, that's just going to add more. It's going to hurt our planet more than when you're dealing with alternative natural fuels. So those 3 points
But what
are
about coal?
yeah. The coal is a fossil fuel, right? So that's what's making everything worse versus like a solar.
Now, only reason I was trying to be funny, but you would hear a lot of people talking about bringing back coal miners and
Yeah, no,
coal industry.
yeah,
So,
like no, like that's not happening. Like it's just not as efficient as alternative energy. It's not. It's cost more, and jobs aren't
right.
as plentiful. In addition to that, when you're trying to mine coal, they've got it to the point now where, um, let's say you're in a coal mine, you can mine coal with 5, 6 people versus hundreds of people because there are machines in place now.
Mm,
It's the same thing that's happening with the automotive industry in that you got machines doing so much of the work. Like there's those jobs aren't coming back, right? Because they've
right.
just been automated.
Right.
So because of that, it just makes sense to go into these alternative energy pieces, alternative play energy spots. But with that being said, with the whole climate change piece, the reason when we're talking about hurricanes, the reason why we're getting more hurricanes is because hurricanes is a direct influence of the heating of the sea. So the hotter it is, the more frequent and worse the hurricane will be. So, for example, I was actually listening to a couple of scientists, and they were talking about how, okay, you remember Hurricane Sandy
Yeah.
in
In
New
New
Jersey?
York,
Yeah, well,
in New Jersey,
let's make it
tri-state
even more.
area.
Let's even make it more clear. Hurricane Katrina, right? Because everybody remembers Hurricane Katrina. Uh,
Right. Okay.
So Hurricane Katrina was usually what you'll get in a hurricane like that is that'll happen once in a generation, right? So once every 50 to 100
Okay.
years, you'll get a Hurricane Katrina, and then you won't get another one for another 50 to 100 years. Because of the warming of the sea, we're starting to see that every 10, 15 years, which means that sea levels are now going to rise quicker than they had been. And this is a direct result of the heating of the sea, which is a direct result of climate change. So uh, essentially what that means is that you can expect the next Harvey slash Katrina slash Irma to hit America in the next 10 to 15 years. And if it happens sooner, then that
And
means
this is just a guesstimate. If we don't stop heating the air, so if we heat it
exactly,
even
it might
quicker,
get worse. Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
So
okay,
again, so what we're saying. So this was only so that Katrina was only supposed to happen. Like that was the only one that we were supposed to see, right? We may see one if we're like
okay,
80, right? That would be like
mm-hmm.
the normal hurricane rate. But now since we're seeing this every 10, 15 years, what we're saying is that, if you live in Florida specifically, like you are in very southern Florida, you're in a very dangerous situation over the next realistically like 30 to 50 years. Like you are in a very dangerous situation because you can be having hurricanes hit if this continues every 5 to 10 years. So because of that,
Okay.
I wanted to ask you this question. I don't know how to ask this, so I'll just ask it. But how do you, if you're a Chicago or a Detroit, how do you market to people in Southern Florida, right? Now that you know that these issues are going to happen, yeah. What's the proper way?
I don't think you should,
Yeah. Okay.
because I think it's too sensitive. It's too sensitive of a subject to talk about this yet.
It is,
I
but it's a
mean,
necessary subject, right?
yeah, it is because, like you said, it's going to keep happening unless something drastically changes. It's going to keep happening in the next 10 years or so. However, our main focus right now shouldn't be okay. How are we going to attract this person to come here now? Since we know that and you know that hurricanes are coming. No, let's figure out ways to let them know. Yes, this possibly will happen again within a few years.
Oh, it
How
will.
can you prepare yourself? How can you prepare yourself? Now, granted, yes, you can fix up your house to a certain way where you won't suffer as many flood to the house or suffer much water damage. But is it you have to be willing to think about the possibility of moving from the state due to the possible risk. Now, I'm not saying leave now, but just put that in your thoughts that this could happen more and more. So how can we go about helping ourselves preventing this? And the way would be possibly we may have to move. So just have that in the back of your mind. Don't just say tell people you should come to Chicago because there's no more. It won't. There's not as many hurricanes. If the world keeps going the way it goes, granted there may not be a hurricane in Chicago, but who knows what else can happen? It could be tornadoes in Chicago. So you have to. Granted, I mean we don't know because we don't know the full details about how we're going to heat the earth up more.
That's true. We don't. That's true.
So, I mean, we just have to be mindful of the fact that anything can happen anywhere. Not just in Florida or the coastal parts of the U.S. I mean, anywhere.
I see what you're coming from.
So,
I do think that the more you look up climate change, in particular Southern Florida, over the next 50 years, the more you should seriously be concerned about what's going to happen to Southern Florida if this continues. When I'm just going to be completely honest and transparent here. When President Trump's doing this whole climate change was created by China and whatnot,
right.
and it's a lie or whatever. I was kind of like, okay, whatever. But when you start researching this climate change, it's like, yeah, that's not the guy you want in charge of the country, in charge of putting the guy in charge like the EPA and whatnot. Like that's really not, because we're again, these next 50 years we're pushing up on it. We're pushing up on the point where we're gonna hit, if this continues the way it is now, we're gonna hit a point of no return, where the only thing you can do is just move inward. and just wait
True.
for the inevitable. And I'm not joking on that. Like this is
You know,
people talk
cold-hearted
about
truth.
so 97% of scientists agree that climate change is real, but there's just a argument over to like the extent, kind of like you said, like can climate change also create more hurricanes? Well, there's probably some debate on that, but everybody agrees that, in particular, when we're talking about things such as like a South Florida, like, hey, in the next 50 to 100 years, we don't get this under control, like we'll pretty much be in a situation where that's it, where it's just going to continue and there's nothing we can do. So people are trying to figure out ways to delay this to where, since it won't happen in the next 50 10 15 years, but it may happen over the next couple 100 years. So that'll give us enough time to possibly figure some things out to make this better. But if we continue along these lines, like, we will hit a point where that's it, and it could happen in our lifetime, where we're to that point where it's like,
or our kids' lifetime.
Oh, definitely our kids, 100%.
If it keeps heating up, could it affect Yellowstone Park? And could that volcano just set off? Could it affect that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure at all.
So I'm just saying, we don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure scientists don't know just yet.
Yeah.
Because the world's steady evolving.
Yeah, that one I'm not sure. I don't want to do that. Play that whole, like, it could get worse here.
Okay,
I'm just going over the things that we know. We 1000%, like, and that's why I'm specifically talking about that South Florida piece, because we know sea levels are going to rise, and we know that if this continues in 50 to 100 years, cities like any city in South Florida will not exist. Like, we know that.
Right. That's true. Louisiana also.
Not, yeah.
It's already below sea level.
Most likely, yeah. I just know about South Florida specifically. I just know about.
No, I'm just saying. I know for a fact Louisiana is below sea level, and they can face those possible risks as well.
You're probably right about that one. So definitely Southern United States, parts of Southern United States, like, we know. And then it becomes, and then you have the issue of resources, right? Which I don't want to. Sorry to paint this whole doomsday scenario over the next 50 to 100 years, but, like, when everybody's moving inland, then you've got the people who, for example, are already living in places, and then you get this huge influx of people from the South that aren't going to be happy about that, because they have to share their limited resources with 10, 20, 30 million new people.
Right.
And we already know what that's going to do.
The resources is what I mean.
People will
start moving from the South.
Yeah, but, like, people are not going to be happy. Imagine you're in Chicago, right? And you're fine. Imagine if you get an extra 10, 20 million. You're not going to be happy with that.
New York.
But you're not going to be happy with that. That's my point. You're not going to be happy with that.
No. I'm not going to be happy with it at all.
So this is why, like, coal is not the answer, and that's unfortunate for people who are, spent, 30, 40, 50 years in the industry, and, have tried their darndest to, create this clean coal type of environment. But the point is, like, unfortunately, like, that's just not what we need.
I think the people in the coal industry understand that. But I think people outside of the coal industry don't understand that. And they're making a big fuss about it.
You're probably right about that. You probably are. But
they understand that there's a huge risk and it needs to be changed. But looking at the way things are now in society, they don't want to change. I mean, people that aren't, excuse me, that's another word. The people who are not in the industry overlook the dangers of coal, and it affects the environment.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's go ahead. Let's wrap this up, because I don't want to get 40 minutes, and we're almost on 30. So, but yeah, we definitely have more. We'd love to talk more about it. If you're interested, definitely leave a comment. Let us know, and definitely subscribe. We got a new subscriber, I think, either last week or this week, so we appreciate that. So again, thanks for always listening and supporting, and check us out at suppliernews.com. Thank you and have a great day.